And we are back on the Zero Hour. We are talking with politics and economics writer David Dayen about a variety of subjects. The one I wanted to pivot to now was student loans. You and I both responded to Shaheen Nassipour's reporting in the Huffington Post about Navient, the loan servicer that was split off from Sallie Mae. Sallie Mae, of course, being the government-sponsored enterprise that was taken private and immediately started behaving in predatory, nasty sorts of ways. Navient abused and cheated a number, about 60,000, one estimate, service members. And the outcome, well, why don't you tell us from your point of view what the outcome was?
Well, they were fined about $139 million for, among other things, those violations of the Service Members Civil Relief Act, giving higher interest rates than the cap on service members for their private student loans, and a variety of other abuses. But the Department of Education is close to confirming a new contract with Navient for $899 million. So, that easily covers the cost of the penalties that were assessed by federal law enforcement on Navient. My real question here is, why do we have student loan services? I understand it in the mortgage context when private investors own the mortgage and don't have the expertise to actually service the loans in terms of collecting the monthly payments and things like that. The U.S. government has the largest accounts receivable agency in the world, known as the Internal Revenue Service. They are administering 85 to 90% of all loans, federal loans. Why are they hiring a company that is an incompetent and fraudulent company at that to service loans when they have the complete capacity to collect payments themselves? In fact, in President Obama's regulatory actions that he took over the past week, a lot of the actions in there are to essentially end run the servicers. They're partnering with H&R Block and Intuit to give better information on alternatives to borrowers, which is something servicers should be doing. They are making automatic the interest rates that go to service members, which is what servicers should be doing. I mean, a large amount of the rules are essentially to go around these incompetent servicers, and yet we're still paying them for no reason that I can discern. So that's the larger point that I think I have around the whole concept of student loan servicing when these are federally administered loans.
And I think, obviously you're asking the question from a functional perspective, but as you know, from a historical perspective, why do we have them? Because the brilliant, in the bipartisan craze to privatize government functions,
Absolutely.
Sallie Mae became a privatized corporation and began behaving badly. And you may remember, I don't know if you remember, I did a piece where I found out they had two corporate jets and I got the ID numbers and got pictures of them. And, government completely only exists because of government, only services student loans. And they're flying around a corporate jets, giving $250,000 to George Bush's inauguration, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then Navient, which was their internal servicing arm, was spun off as another publicly traded company, traded on NASDAQ. So there's a lot of money changing hands.
It's in a lot of respects. In a lot of respects, it's similar to Medicare Advantage, right? This is this private entity that was spun off, a separate program that essentially is a partial privatization of Medicare. So private companies can supply Medicare insurance, and as we know, it's more expensive, and it's to such a degree that in the Affordable Care Act, there was hundreds of billions of dollars that were saved by limiting these overpayments to Medicare Advantage. So this is another example, and a really egregious example, when you have the federal government making rules and executive orders to bypass the student loan servicers that they are paying large sums of money to service student loans.
Right. And when we know, for example, that student loan servicer, in the case of U.S. military, was doing things like when those troops were eligible for lower rate student
Right.
loans, telling them, oh, no, you don't get that rate unless you were
Right.
deployed overseas in an act, just lying. So now
Absolutely.
here's something I think you and I also agree on. You asked the question, why do we have student loan servicers? End game for me, and I think for you as well. Why do we have student loans? I
Yeah,
wrote a piece called,
exactly.
you know, I wrote a piece called "Free Higher Education is a Human Right, or Should Be." And what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we talk a lot about this crushing burden of student debt, and it's over $1.2 trillion. It's more money than any set of debt other than mortgages. There's more student debt than credit card debt. We talk about all this, and in general, the political conversation is about how to make those loans more affordable. And what the political conversation should be how to make those loans irrelevant. There is enough money through grants and aid, through subsidies, that is spent right now on higher education to make public higher education at public colleges and universities absolutely free. We could do that. If somebody wants to go to a private university, have a different manner of education, they're free to do that. The public doesn't necessarily have to subsidize that. If they give them a public option that is separate and apart at public colleges and universities and community colleges and the like, that is free to students. And that's everything that's free, not just tuition, but books and fees and things like that. So it's possible. It's extremely possible. It just would require a complete transformation of this vision of, the higher education as a market and all of the various things that we have, and changing that vision to one where higher education is an investment in the future, and we should not be harming our economy and causing self-inflicted wounds by crushing young college graduates, 21, 22, 23 years old, with this giant debt that that forces them to delay major purchases of autos and homes, and has a really deleterious effect on our economic future.
And tossing them into a job market that's the worst in modern history for them. And by the way, you're not talking about pie in the sky stuff. You're talking about kind of a European norm, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Many European, many industrialized nations have this model already in hand. There's one called the United States of America that has this model. Certainly where I live and where you live in California, the Master Plan for Education in the 1960s had college education at very prestigious public universities here in California as a free and available to residents of the state. And that arguably was one of the main reasons why the California economy soared through the 1950s and 1960s. And we can thank Pat Brown for that, who was Jerry Brown's father, who was the governor from 1958 to 1966. So not only is it, are there international models for this, there are models right here in America that prove that this can work. And the important thing is the money is there. We already, with tax preferences and grants and all of these kinds of things, have the funding available to make this a reality.
And as you know, I think you probably know, but a study came out that showed that a lot of those tax preference intended to sacrifice government revenue for the good of students actually disproportionately goes to higher income students, not to lower income students who could most benefit from it. But now, in the minute or two we have left, I just want to hit on one other topic. Watch this segue, Dave. Okay, so if we had free private higher education, that would also conceivably have a market effect on private schools and who overpay their executives. One of those private school CEOs or presidents was, of course, Harvard with Larry Summers. Now, you wrote recently about, you see where I'm going. You wrote recently about Larry Summers and the housing crisis. and
Oh,
you had a couple observations about that. Want to just tell us briefly what they were?
sure. I wrote about this book called The House of Debt, which is a great book by two professors, Atif Mian and Amir Sufi. Larry Summers also wrote a review of this book, and he, in it, the main criticism in House of Debt is that the Obama administration should have done more to restructure mortgage debt in the wake of the crisis. That was the reason. This burden of debt from the popping of the housing bubble was the reason why we had a severe recession and a very slow recovery. Summers kind of agreed with that, but also objected to the fact that the administration didn't do everything they could. And it was a very weird way in which he went about this. He said that the administration did not have a banking view, in other words, a view of save the banks, save the economy, which was the main criticism of Sufi and Mian. But at the same time, his objections to restructuring mortgage debt largely revolved around the fact that the banks would be hurt by such a policy. So it was a really strange kind of assessment that Summers was saying, no, we didn't have a banking view. We wanted to help homeowners too, but you don't understand, helping homeowners would have hurt the banks. So it was this
Right.
weird circular logic that he was going through, and it's a very interesting book, and I do recommend it to everybody.
Yes, we had Amir Sufi on the show. He was great,
Oh, fantastic,
and
fantastic.
yeah, and we recommend it also. And Summers, this just speaks to my theory that these guys are so embedded in this way of thinking that they can't even see that it exists.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah,
listen,
I
Dave.
totally agree.
Yeah, thanks. David Dayen, you do fantastic work. I'm a big fan of your writing, and I hope you'll come back and talk to us again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show, Richard. Appreciate it.
You bet.